Hello and welcome to Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics. This is Cyrus, your host, and tonight I had some thoughts about the UFO community and how it is ultimately very important to the goals that we have here, talking about metaphysical origins of consciousness, who we are, where we go when we die. Those big topics are in many ways interwoven with our friends and neighbors over in the UFO and UFO disclosure communities, even though there is a bit of a divide between these genres of thought. And I can see areas where both of these subjects could really learn from one another. And that's definitely something that we all need to think about a little bit more. Before we get more into that, you are watching Afterlife Topics and Metaphysics, and if you like this kind of stuff, please hit the subscribe button, as well as like it, share it, get the information out there. I was thinking a little bit before I loaded this new presentation up, that if we get up high enough subs, and right now we're at about 500 subscribers, but if we were able to get that number up to 3, 4, 5, 6,000, meaning the videos are all nice and monetized, a little bit of funding is able to back it, then we can start going into bigger productions, maybe documentaries, investigations. I'll be out traveling abroad soon, which could involve investigating sacred sites, areas with high energy, places where there are, among other things, possible extraterrestrial influence, paranormal types locations, all kinds of really cool stuff that could happen if this channel were to take off. Things I'd love to get involved with, but to do that, basically it needs funding. And to get funding, you have to have enough subscribers, enough people watching to make it all work. So that's why subscribing is such a important thing to do. All right, so to continue. So why is the UFO community, though, a bit broken? And what can we do about that? And how is it, again, that these two topics are interconnected? So I've always had a difficult time getting along with people in these UFO communities, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I'm a bit of a critical thinker. And there are issues in UFO/extraterrestrial communities in terms of people kind of jumping on bandwagons and wanting really hard to believe in things, and sometimes just accepting whatever somebody will tell them instead of using their critical thought and doing their own research. This is why when you put in Google UFO cult, there's been so many darn UFO cults up to and including, let's say, like Heaven's Gate. Today, when I look around communities, even communities on Facebook, I see a lot of big problems with that kind of stuff. I see people getting heavily involved with ideas that so and so is channeling some ET from this other planet, and then they have this message of blah blah blah. A lot of times it just doesn't add up, and then if you dig a little bit deeper, you'll come to find that somebody is profiting in some way off of it. Much like the psychic and afterlife community has an issue with fake psychics and fake channelers, the ET community does as well. But in many ways, though, it's much worse than the afterlife, metaphysical, and psychic communities, though they are a bit interlinked. The UFO/disclosure community has issues with rampant paranoia. This is another reason I tend to get kicked off of forums, because I begin asking questions, questioning their narrative. See, they're all about questioning the mainstream narrative. I come along and question their narrative. Are all vaccines fundamentally bad if vaccines cured smallpox? If we know that vaccines stop rabies? Are you telling me that if you get bit by a wild dog, you're not going to go in and get that rabies vaccine? And I only mention this in reference to UFOs because the disclosure community is kind of like one half of the UFO community, and it's heavily steeped in some of these conspiracy types of thinking. Essentially that there's a deep state in control of everything. They have all the alien technology. We have an alliance battling the deep state, and right now we're in the throes of it. As of right now, in early January 2019, we're in the middle of this massive government shutdown. They definitely believe that there's a deeper meaning going on because there's this internal battle happening in the deep state. But it also means that there's these powerful occult forces who, in addition to working with negative ETs, they are controlling our lives and injecting us with chemicals that are shortening our lifespans in the form of vaccines and a lot of other areas that the disclosure community is heavily involved in. And I take a lot of it seriously. I'm a fan of David Wilcock. I'm a fan of like Cosmic Disclosure on Gaia. I've listened to all the secret space program insiders. I know about all of those theories and a lot of very, very credible accounts by people who are not lying when they tell us about their experiences with extraterrestrials being taken on ships, being part of secret space programs, and being given sort of prophecies about humanity. Like there's some very, very credible people in that area where like I would never suspect that any of them are lying, although I wouldn't go so far as to say I completely believe the stories, because we know from the astral projection side of things, you can have unbelievable vivid adventures and whole lives on other dimensions that seems like no time at all has passed, even though rather on the outside it's like no time had passed, but it felt like you'd been gone for a long time. So I do have some alternate possible theories about some of these experiences. But the point is, I take it all quite seriously. But when you get to the community level, I don't always get along so well because I'll question their narrative. Okay, so the deep state uses vaccines to shorten our lifespans. How do we know what vaccines? Are all vaccines bad? Where's the evidence? If there is no evidence, let's hear the compelling theory. Can't necessarily disprove the theory. Can't prove the negative. But if that's the case, are you really telling me not to get a vaccine if a wild dog bites me? I don't think that's going to happen because that's irrational. We know that some vaccines work. That's just one example. Chemtrails is another one. Okay, you want to talk about deep state weather geoengineering projects? Okay, that this sometimes takes the form of injecting chemicals into the atmosphere. Okay, we know this. This is a scientific fact. Is the deep state doing this much more than they say? Yes. Um, could those chemicals be poisoning us as well? Yes. Is every single time we see a plane go by leaving a contrail a chemtrail? No. That's irrational. But people in these communities will argue with you and then tell you that you're a shill or you're a deep state disinformation agent if you question anything. So you get this like extreme level of groupthink going on in these communities, which is sometimes downright frightening, if you ask me. I've known some people who have suffered from real bad paranoia after going into those communities, even if there is an underlying truth happening, that we need to take seriously. So I mentioned the disclosure community as one half. The other half is kind of like the ET channeling community or the light worker community, areas like that. And it also suffers from fragmentation, people fighting amongst each other, fans of certain books going after fans of other books, like Gangs of New York. You have fans of David Icke going after the fans of David Wilcock, going after the fans of so and so other author. And basically the afterlife and metaphysical communities is downright harmonious by comparison to these guys. So, so we're looking at a very fragmented, very fractured area, and I have a very difficult time indulging in those communities like on Facebook, whereas I otherwise am in a ton of afterlife groups on Facebook, and there's tons of very very intelligent discussions going on that side with all like whether it's the light workers and the ET people or the disclosure community. I put my foot in it, but it doesn't always work out too well. I guess because there is this kind of issue sometimes with the critical thinking. Now, That doesn't mean that there isn't a lot of hope for these communities, because I do think these are two pieces of the puzzle that have to fit together, because extraterrestrial entities are also otherworldly entities, extra-dimensional entities. To understand extra-dimensional types of stuff and where extra-dimensional entities come from, then we have to go into the field of the astral plane, metaphysics, consciousness beyond the body, what we call the afterlife, and learn about how the very ETs that we learn about are coming from some of these same worlds that we study when we do spirit communication. It's actually all tied together in this field of multi dimensions. So so these are two pieces of the puzzle. They have to find a way to come together. I see it happening more and more. One way I see it happening is some of the channeled works by ETs. One of them is the Law of One, eloquently describes how different dimensions are set up. So I use the terminology. Humans are on the third density level. Actually, let me back up. A rock is the first density, like an animal or a plant is the second density of consciousness, going on levels of consciousness. Humans are third density, and basically, like deceased people, spirits, whatever you want to call it, are fourth density, at least immediately following death. Some even call it like 3.5 density, just a little bit less physical than our world, is the astral condition. And this is the same area that a lot of the ETs come from. And that's why they can just beam their craft in from some other dimension. They have all these powers because they're coming from the same place. It's all coming from the same place, these higher dimensions. So there are some works very popular in the ET communities that elaborate on that kind of thing, and that's really good because it's kind of combining these two divergent areas of knowledge toward one path, which is what we need. And basically, what we need to see is a lot more normies getting into like the ET stuff, because it's been so fringe for so long. That's why we see so much paranoia and infighting, because the bulk of the population involved may be people who, let's just say, they're very creative, or they can see things maybe other people cannot see, but it has a flip side of maybe leading to paranoia and mental dysfunction. And so that's why we see so much fighting. We also see a lot of excessive drug use, excessive marijuana use, which can also lead to paranoia. So I've been seeing that for years in some of these other like light worker communities or ET communities, ET groups, like heavy use of like edibles. And edibles can be bad trips. It causes crazy paranoia in some people, and that can become like a way of life. And I've seen that eat people up, the paranoia. So what we have to see is more normies, more regular people getting into both sides of these topics and kind of learning from the ground up, and hopefully having nice, coherent, sober information to learn about. And that's why I wrote Understanding Life After Death, to be a sober, coherent way for new people to begin learning about life after death. And you can find that on afterlifetopics.com. So let's see. So those are just some thoughts I had tonight about the ET community. A couple other thoughts. I'm leaving town soon. I'm heading to the Philippines. Then I'm heading to other places in Asia, including Japan. Man, I just realized tonight that the government's been shut down for almost 3 weeks. We can expect long lines at the airports because of TSA agents who are walking out because they're not getting paid anything. And I'm just thinking, whether we believe that this is an operation happening to fight the deep state or not, um, there's something going on here, and it's leading someplace kind of scary. And I'm realizing I'm kind of glad that I'm getting out of the USA, because I don't know where this is going. How long can we be without a government? And then if we enter a state of emergency, I don't know. So, some people, I just got done listening to David Wilcock on Fade to Black. You can hear it out on YouTube. They're all talking about stockpiling up on lentils and rice for at least a couple weeks worth. I don't really know what to think, but I am kind of glad I'm getting out of Dodge for a little while. But I realize most of you guys are not. But I would say stay kind of vigilant and have some backup plans because like if the government stays off, then it means air travel is going to stop. If there's an air travel embargo, like things are going to start getting worse and worse from that point on. Not just with the economy, but with our food supplies. Who knows what else? So stay vigilant. Also keep your eyes on the news because on the topic of the ET stuff, I mean, there's stuff coming out every day now. They call this the partial disclosure process of like the underground, the shadow government trying to begin releasing and acclimatizing the public. So yesterday they're talking about a radio signal that's been being heard from a distant galaxy. We're hearing some interviews with Luis Elizondo, the guy who ran the Pentagon UFO research program, basically saying there's going to be like more reveals and stuff happening this year. So there's a lot of crazy stuff going on right now, really crazy stuff. I'm happy that these different topics kind of merge together. All right, well, that's about all I had to say tonight. Thanks for tuning in. Again, you can check out our work, afterlifetopics.com. You can support the work that I'm doing, as well as other people who are working on board with this whole community by going to afterlifetopics.com/university. You can join for $30 a month, becoming a patron. We have classes twice a week that are super in depth. If you like these videos, the classes are way better than the videos. Alright, this is Cyrus, and I'm gonna stop recording and finish up this video. Alright, I'll talk to you guys next time.